Well, good morning, everybody. My name's Ray Grosh, and I'm a member of the Waukesha County Transit Coalition, affiliated with Sophia in Waukesha County. We're here today to talk about transportation in Wisconsin, and specifically about southeastern Wisconsin. For the last 2 years, it's been my pleasure to work with volunteers and organizations around the state to help create a new report called Arrive Together, Transportation Access and Equity in Wisconsin. There's a lot of a conversation happening right now about the state of our roads, but we don't talk much about another critical component of our transportation system, public transit. This report examines how well the transportation system's been working for those people who are unable to drive or don't want to drive. We're going to hear first today the findings of this report, and then from several people using the public transportation in the Milwaukie area. Our first speaker is Peter Skopek, Director of the Wisconsin Public Interest Group, WISPER. Here you go, Peter.
All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here, and thank you all for your really amazing work on this report. My name is Peter Skopek. I'm the director at WISPERG, the Wisconsin Public Interest Research Group. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit that does organizing and advocacy around the state, and I'm really excited to be here today with all of you, and I'm excited that this conversation is happening. Like you said, Ray, there's a lot of talk about transportation and specifically about the state of our roads in Wisconsin at the moment. It's election season, but something that doesn't get talked about a lot is another just absolutely crucial component of our transportation system, and that's public transportation. So I think it's worth remembering that Wisconsin transit systems serve 70 million rides every single year, which is a lot. And again, this is just an absolutely crucial component of our transportation system that we want to highlight today. The bottom line is this: if we want a 21st century transportation system that works for everyone, we have to talk about public transportation and we have to invest in public transportation. Over the last 15 years, the state has invested billions of dollars in expanding major highways, and we've taken on a lot of debt to do that. And as a result, we're left with less money to invest in local priorities, whether that's fixing local roads and bridges or investing in public transportation and walking and biking infrastructure that a lot of people rely on. And this report shows the impact of those misplaced priorities. Lots of communities and transit systems around the state are working really hard to do what they can with limited funds, but they're struggling. Focusing on highway expansion at the expense of local roads and transit systems means that a lot of people today can't get to the places that matter. In Milwaukie and Waukesha counties, for example, lots of people can't access work or school or other places that they want to go. For this report, the authors profiled 9 different communities across the state and talked to transit riders and transit agencies about the challenges that people in those communities faced. Every community has unique challenges, but there were a couple of themes that kept coming out. So first, people often can't access outlying areas beyond city centers. So in Milwaukie and Waukesha County, that means that many workers don't have access to some of the areas with the fastest job growth in the region, whether that's New Berlin or Germantown or other places in the Milwaukie region. And that is only going to get harder once the 2 job lines that go from the city here in Milwaukie to the suburbs, once those 2 job lines end, because there's limited funding and no secure funding source for those routes. The other problem that bus riders identified was that bus routes don't run frequently enough, so missing a bus or missing a connection often means having to wait for hours to get to where you want to go. Next, in a lot of communities, buses don't run on weekends or in the evenings, so if your shift ends late or you work on the weekend, or if you just want to go see a movie in the evening, in many communities, you can't do that. And then finally, many bus routes come close to the places that matter, but not quite close enough. Lots of transit riders are concerned about walking not being safe near bus routes or not having adequate bus stops and shelters. One of our partners, Kathy, who's a transit rider in Wausau and actually sits on the transit commission there, she's visually impaired. She has to use the bus to get around. She often has to walk through huge piles of snow to get from the bus stop to her home, which is very difficult, especially late at night and when it's very cold outside. So again, the specific challenges that a lot of communities face are unique from region to region and from city to city, but one thing is very clear, and that is that public transit systems are starved for resources. The lack of funding from the state and barriers to creating regional transportation authorities to raise funds and better connect and coordinate services make it hard for systems to support routes that are frequent enough, that run in the evenings or on the weekends, and that go to the places that matter. The solution really is pretty simple. We have to get our priorities straight. We should stop expanding highways that cost billions of dollars and don't address congestion or connect people to the places that they want to go. Instead, we should really focus on local infrastructure. Let's fix our local roads and bridges. Let's invest in public transportation and walking and biking in our communities. Lots of people already rely on public transportation today, and more are going to in the future. The population in Wisconsin is aging rapidly. If people want to continue to be able to get to places that they want to go, we are going to have to invest in public transportation. Young people's preferences are changing. They increasingly want to live in places where they can get around without a car and where they have options. So the bottom line, again, is that if we want to create communities where people want to live and where everyone has access to work, to school, to the doctor's office, and to other places that matter, we have to invest in public transportation. So thank you. I'll hand it back to Ray to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Peter. Our next speaker will be Jim Davies, who lives in South Milwaukee and uses the bus and bikes to get around.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is James Davies. I live in the city of South Milwaukee and I work downtown. And this morning, like most mornings, not just because I knew we were going to be doing this conference today, I put my daughter on my bike, biked her to the daycare, and then took my bike and I was able to take the 48 right downtown. And it drops me off literally in front of my office. I'm really fortunate that I have the ability to use the bus that way, but a lot of people don't have bus routes that perfectly serve their needs or that they can use or that run when they need them. My wife, for example, lives the same distance from her job as I do, but she works in Racine, and there isn't a good public transit option that goes from South Milwaukee to Racine. So that's something else that a regional transit authority could help address in terms of more regional planning. But so one of the key recommendations of this report is that Wisconsin needs to create regional transit authorities to address our transit needs. And I think that that's definitely something that we need to do that'll allow adequate funding and ensure that the regional planning that is necessary for truly great public transit can happen.
I'm giving up on the job lines. I still think that we can work with Waukesha County and Milwaukee County to say we need this. This is important to both of you, so why can't we sit down and work something out? There's a meeting tonight of the county board out in Waukesha, and I think that, you know, as we talk together, employers are just finding out these job lines are going away, and they're saying, oh no, in Waukesha. So there's still some hope for the job lines. Don't give up on them.
Thank you. And I do agree we need to continue to work on the job line issue.
The problem is that people cannot connect to the jobs. Even where I live now in Racine, Foxconn is there. I know of many people who would be able to benefit from those jobs out there, but the bus lines will not connect them to the jobs. We have the same issues that still pertain to 1997 with regional cooperation in Waukesha, where the jobs are there and people can't connect. And it's not just a black-white thing, and the big thing that I want to emphasize is that so many people are locked out. You've got Latinx workers, Asian workers, you've got poor white workers that are constantly being left out of the fold, where that money that's allocated for mass transportation usually gets diverted into building roads or options such as high-speed rail or train systems for the corporate employers. And what we're saying is take those dollars that were earmarked for mass transportation and provide them to the people who need the most, who rely on mass transportation the most.
Thank you, James. Well, thank you all again, and everyone for coming this morning. Are there any questions? You have a question? No?
Why are you all here?
Okay, we're all here to promote transportation, public transportation. And as James was saying, there's been a real lack in our area of coordination between the communities. And I don't believe southeastern Wisconsin is ever going to really achieve anything until we can work together with a coordinated transportation system so that everybody can participate. Thank you all.
Okay, James, can you just introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
My name is James Morris, and I'm a resident of Racine, Wisconsin. Work for an organization called Wisconsin Voices, and basically our mission is to get out and do what we can to civically educate our community and hopefully develop bases in which we can actually access power.
What are some of the transit issues that you see in your community?
Huge, similar issues that have been going on for decades, which is you got a lot of people who are really wanting to work, really wanting to earn sustainable wages to support their families, but unfortunately don't have their own transportation, and they rely on mass transportation such as the buses. And unfortunately, both in Racine, Kenosha, and Milwaukee, many of the jobs that are available don't connect the people. People can't connect transportation to those jobs, and so we've got a shortage of employees, and we've got a huge base that really wants to work.
And you were a contractor with the Wisconsin DOT. Can you tell us a little about what that was?
Sure.
Like?
I took a contracting position with DOT, hopefully to be able to make a larger difference when it comes to mass transportation issues and the disparities that we see. While there, worked on procuring or overseeing Title IX federal legislation that states that 10% of federal dollars on public projects should go to minorities and women, and that's in the same vein as far as mass transportation. Those are federal dollars, and what I continually saw was those monies being allocated to or diverted to road builders or other options, such as finding ways to meet the needs of corporate workers who lived in different counties, but not to those people who heavily relied on mass transportation.
What would you say should we be spending our transportation dollars on?
Well, as I said back years ago, we need to allow the people to make the decisions. Oftentimes, the decisions are made before they even get to the community, and we see, just kind of window dressing for focus groups and public hearings. So we want that money should be spent the way to people who rely on it, all people, not just some people, but let the people decide what's the best options to spend those federal dollars on when it comes to transportation.
Great. Is there anything else you want to add?
Not today.
Great.
Thank you.
That was excellent. Thank you so much.